Hey folks, as you come online, I'm gonna just, since we're doing this live, wait until a few people show up, and then we'll start. This video is going to be a response to a video that Curtis Stone put out yesterday, and he's called on quite a few people who are seen as leaders in the thought movement, and specifically in permaculture and regenerative agriculture movement, and he hit 5 key areas in his video. I'm going to respond to that because he asked us to respond to it. This is not a debate at all. This is collaboration. And I really didn't quite see exactly how many people he asked to do this. I'm really hoping that all of them do, though. I know Ben Falk was mentioned, so I'd love to hear from Ben on this too. And kind of my first thing here is I actually want to expand this groupthink. And maybe create kind of a think tank on some of these questions. So if you haven't seen Curtis's video yet, he basically hit on trying to take things from destructive to constructive. That was his overall theme. And he hit politics, medicine, economics, legal system, and agriculture. And there's a lot of agriculture in it because, well, that's Curtis's background. That's a big part of my background. And I think the first thing that we're going to probably want to do with the agriculture thing is let's stop using the term agriculture. And that's going to come into a broader theme of what I'm going to talk about today. We are in a situation where these systems that we find unjust, because like Curtis is like, we need a new legal system because the existing legal system is unjust. And what that'll immediately do is put people into 2 camps, and people will feel the need to defend that system. And then people will point out all the reasons you can't change that system. And both sides will make legitimate points. And so one of the reasons I don't want to use the term agriculture, and I know we use the term regenerative agriculture, etc., but if we understand, and one of the things I want to be clear on too is we need to start being precise about our language and precise about the words that we choose to use. And make some allowance for marketing. Because when you're putting ideas out there, whether you realize it or not, the only way that you're going to be successful is you need to be able to have those ideas stand up and be marketable. You have to be able to win over people with those ideas. But we can do that and be precise. So many of you that listen to my podcast, and this segment will be my segment for the podcast today as well on the Expert Council Show, I am fond of using much more of the term horticulture than agriculture. And I want you to kind of think about this as we go through this video today as how many places this would apply. So agriculture means the culture of fields. So, I mean, if you ask Curtis Stone, like when you were doing your agricultural business, were you practicing agriculture, he would say yes. But what Curtis was really doing is horticulture. You know, and Curtis was, railing yesterday on monocultures and saying monocultures do not exist in nature. I completely agree. And his system that he was farming, right? Farming and agriculture aren't necessarily the same word, was horticultural. He was cultivating plants to the benefit of humans. That's what horticulture is. And human beings are natural horticulturists. You can take a little kid in the woods and show them a plant and show them how a seed works without giving them any specific instructions. You just say, this plant grows and this thing forms and a seed falls off. And when it goes in the ground, it makes a new plant. And some portion of those children, when you go visit their homes, will have that plant growing in their backyard. You won't have to make them do it. And they'll plant a whole bunch of seeds, and you won't worry about your belief that, well, that won't work. They'll just plant a whole bunch of stuff, some of it will work, and they'll start playing with that. And that's innately human. Agriculture, and so many people don't understand this word, and it was Mark Shepard who opened up this box for me, and it changed my paradigm on so many things. Agriculture means the culture of fields. And then Toby Hemingway dropped that on top with liberation permaculture, which is organized anarchy and agorism. And that changed a lot about how I think about so many of these things. And there's 2 things that I think need to be done in all of these spaces, and in fact all of the spaces that interact with humanity, if you want to move humanity forward. One is a battle of thought, and that is to change how people think. And again, I want to be precise with words today. I mean extremely precise. I did not say, and you did not hear me say, to change what people think.
You didn't hear me say to change how things should be done. Right? Because I want to be horticultural with people, not agricultural. The school system is an agricultural education model. We put all the kids in a chair, we make them all line up, we teach them all the same thing, and we judge them all the same way, even though in a classroom with 60 people, we have 60 individuals that have 60 different agendas and goals for their life. And we put them into a monocultured environment. And we teach them what to think and how things should be done versus how to think so that they can get the things they want in their life and help others get the things they want in their life. So our first battle on the information platform is to start encouraging people in how to think about a problem. The other thing that I would like to do, and this is actually far more difficult right now, is one of the reasons, for instance, we know regenerative agriculture works, and I'll let that word go there because that's generally what we call it. And you know how I feel about the word agriculture anyway. But what we can do is when somebody says, well, that can't work, we can go, well, it works over here, it works over here, it works over here. Look at this place. Look at this place 10 years ago. It was barren and dead, and now look at it. And here's the cows, and here's the income from the property. And here's the farmer that's not in debt. And here's all the bird species that move back in. Here's all the frog species that move back in. Here is an example. Here is a concrete example of this working. So your objection that it won't work is now irrelevant. Your objection that it can't be done is now irrelevant. Your objection that it's not scalable when I can point to 200, 300, 500, 1,000 acre projects is now irrelevant. When I can do like Mark Shepard did in his first book and say, let's do a calorie output analysis. Look at the inputs versus the outputs and compare this to a cornfield. And say, yes, I don't produce any single thing that's more than corn, but the combined total blows it away and the inputs are a fraction. You can't argue anymore. So a lot of the things that we would like to do with medicine, with the legal system, etc., we need an example place, a libertarian compound, something like that. But I found that those are very difficult to pull off. The entire system is designed to prevent us from doing that. But I would love, sure, to see someplace with a decent climate and it far enough away from other people, and you set up a town and you call it Liberty Town or something like that. You incorporate, so you use the system to be out of the system and say, we don't need your help here. We'll have our own security, we'll have our own medical system, and if we need you, we'll interact with you on the edge, because all productivity is on the edge. So actually, the more of these things you can create, the more edge interactions you create, and if we can stop this edge interaction from trying to destroy this, then the actual most brilliant ideas will not come inside these places or in the system. It'll come where the two interact peacefully if you can get that done. But that is very difficult. If you look at even people that went out in the middle of the desert in New Mexico to build earthships, and they took an architect with them, and the state took away his architectural license and basically destroyed him, even though none of his customers were unhappy with him. And nothing he did actually was illegal. They just didn't like the way that he did it. So we need to start thinking about not how we work in that system. How do we get as far out of that as possible? One of the ways you might do that is you take structural engineers and you don't have them operate under their license, and you just build your shit the way that you want it, and you put some form of a wall around that. And that could be physical walls. It could be legal walls. Again, incorporating as a town in that type of environment. So that we have town laws. We'll let you know if we need your help. Bye-bye. But again, these types of things are very difficult to pull off because everything is set up to prevent them. And the places you might be able to do are the most inhospitable places that there are. And then you've got to get people who are willing to sacrifice and build a life to come there. And I'm going to tell you something that some of you aren't going to like. Most of us already did it. It's really hard to get me to leave my place and go to Jabipville to do something like this, because in spite of what you think about how hard it is to do, you can do it just about anywhere for yourself. So most of us that are willing to do the work and make the sacrifice and make the investment, we're already doing it or have done it. So now you got your people that are most capable of building something like this that have already built something. And what's holding them back is how hard it is to like bring people in and start building around them, because all the places that are for sale around me are $500,000 homes. So how many people can I bring here? And trust me, I've tried. I take my, and because this is nothing about anybody's income, but when these homes go for sale, I take all my like-minded, affluent friends and I send them listings. And it's not that I don't want somebody without money moving here. I just know that, like, me showing you this $500,000 house doesn't help you if you have a $30,000 a year income, right? So there's that difficulty on all these functional things, being able to actually do these demonstration sites. And you can do a piece. So Mark Shepard can do a farm, right? But trying to do this integrated thing, and it's something I've taken a stab at, and I had millions of dollars lined up in 48 hours. Over $10 million, like, we're in. We'll do this thing. And a person from the FTC came and told me, and he liked me. He was not the bad guy. He just said, I love you. I've been following you forever. But I'm telling you, if you do what you're going to do the way you're going to do it, you're going to go to federal prison. And I actually had people saying, you should do it anyway. Well, you're not the one that has to go to Club Fed, and I'm not going. Right? So that's difficult. So the place I think to start, to do the most good the quickest, is the information side and getting people to think differently. And it has its own set of challenges. So let's take something that's going on right now. Like, what do we do about the problem that we have in the legal system, specifically law enforcement? And immediately you get two things. All cops are bastards, or most cops are good cops. Neither one of those statements fixes the problem. Neither one of those, and no matter how much a case a person can make on either side of that, it doesn't fix the problem. So I put out a thing that was designed to get people to think this morning for the experiment of seeing how people think. And I said, you don't want police. You want security. You don't want schools. You want an education. And I limited it to that because I put it out on Facebook and I wanted to have that nice little pretty black thing with the pretty words. And if you go much longer than that, it won't let you do it. And I said, what else can you add to this? And I got two totally different types of responses. I got responses that were great. That were like, you don't want health insurance, you want to be healthy. That person got it. And then I got this kind of a response. Over the head. Missed the point entirely. But they think they're agreeing with me. They read what I said to sound like this. You don't want security. You don't want police, but you want security. Like it was being facetious. So they were like, well, you don't want this, but you want that. So you don't want a military, but yet you want freedom. Yet you want a defense. Take the word yet out. And all of a sudden, you got it, but you didn't get it, right? All I was saying is, take anything that we have a flawed system for, and then say, why do we have this system? What do we want as people? I don't want roving gangs to be able to come take my stuff from my property. I very much want some level of security. And I see multiple ways for that security to exist. What you would call internal security, which are things that I control, and external security, which right now we use law enforcement for, in my case, the sheriff's department. And I'm going to say right now, my sheriff's department, I don't know anybody that lives around here that has a big problem with the people that work for our sheriff's department. We are generally fairly happy with our law enforcement. Doesn't mean I don't think it can be better. I'm just saying my sheriff's department's not out harassing people because of the way they look or what they're doing. My sheriff's department's pretty much not bothering people unless you're cooking meth in your backyard. And then they're probably only doing it if somebody's complaining about it. All right, so they seem to be very much in touch with what the community wants. But I can show you just as, for every place like that where in general things work well, I can show you a place that it doesn't. So when we look for a solution to that problem, one of the things that people that want to defend the system always use is what we call the nirvana fallacy, right? The utopia fallacy. Call it what you want. It's the same thing. And that is that if I can find anything wrong, anything that could go wrong with your proposal, it's invalid. Doesn't matter that everything you point out is also wrong with your existing system. A solution need not be perfect. It only needs to be better. So, for instance, one of my solutions to the problem of law enforcement, especially in some areas where people aren't happy, why not scrap the concept of a monopolistic law enforcement agency and replace it with a private security firm that enforces the same laws, but is accountable directly to the people. Meaning that, let's say Curtis Stone, who did this, let's say Curtis Stone has Curtis Stone's security services, and we, the people of unincorporated Tarrant County, where I live, say we're going to replace the sheriff's department with Curtis Stone's firm. And after a year, we don't really like the way things are going. Well, Curtis has a multi-million-dollar contract. He's pretty incentivized to keep us happy, right? But he does a bad job. So when we vote, we decide we're going to replace his firm with, God help us, Jake Robinson's firm, for whatever reason we would do such a stupid thing. But we make that decision. And annually we make that decision. And people say, well, that's fascism. Well, actually, the existing system looks a lot more fascist than the one that I'm describing. I'm describing, because right now, who pays for my local sheriff's department? Who pays for them? I do. My neighbors do. We pay the bill. But who's the customer in this relationship? Tarrant County is. Tarrant County is subject to the jurisdiction of the state of Texas, both of which are subject to additional federal laws. So the customer is the state, but the state's not paying the bill, I am. In my particular thing, I become the customer. And people say, well, you don't vote. Well, I don't vote because I can do math, and I know my vote doesn't matter. In this scenario, you have an equal stake as a shareholder in how funds are spent and with whom. And if I elect a new sheriff, my deputies don't change the way that the Tarrant County Sheriff's Department does not change. The mouthpiece that talks about what to do changes, but the actual people on the street and the methods that they use change very little or not at all. If I fire a firm that goes away, and a new firm comes in to provide security, at that point, it wouldn't just be we're voting for A or B. It's not a popularity contest like the presidency, okay? It's actually a proposal. Here's how many people we're going to put on the street. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how we're going to do our jobs. Here's the thing we see the existing provider doing wrong that we can do right. And you get 1 year to prove your shit, or you get kicked out. And now I'm the customer. Now, is that a perfect solution? No, it doesn't need to be. Is it the best solution we can come up with? I have no idea. I highly doubt it. I highly doubt that I just took one shot at this and found the best way to do this, but at least I've done something. And it's because I've asked myself the proper question. How can we do a better job of providing security for people? With no attachment to what we're doing now. That doesn't mean what we're doing now would end up being replaced. I think in most instances, if people gave this a critical analysis, we would come up with something better. That's kind of the whole point. But if after that critical analysis we decided, what we have here is the best thing for here, then you stick with that. Maybe you modify it a little bit. You do your conventional changing the system from inside thing for this place. But that doesn't mean that people over here will come to the same conclusion from their analysis. And it doesn't mean that either one of them would be wrong. Maybe, because like I said, Sheriff's Department works really well here. People in general in Fort Worth, believe it or not, are pretty happy with the Fort Worth Police Department. I'm not so much, but generally the people that live in Fort Worth are. I don't live in Fort Worth. Because I don't want to. I made a decision of where I live, and one thing I looked at was how law enforcement worked here. Because I knew I couldn't, on a scale of permanence, with the mountain being 7, laws and regulations are a 6. They're very hard to change. So you need to be strategic about where you go in the first place. But I guarantee you, if that analysis was done in Dallas, Texas right now, people might have a totally different viewpoint. Maybe they should be able to make those decisions locally as to how they do this. Maybe my solution isn't even best for me. Maybe it's really good for the people of Dallas or St. Louis or Kansas City or Philadelphia or Minneapolis. And I don't know. It's up to them. But wouldn't it be great if they actually were able to consider that? If we could actually start challenging people in how to think, so that when I say something like, you don't want security, you don't want police, what you really want is security for yourself, your family, and your possessions and your community. How can we do that? People hear what I'm actually saying instead of, well, you don't want police, but you want security. Because I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean it that way at all. And then how many places can you apply this? You don't, let me tell you something else you think you want, because the system has taught you that you want it. You don't want health insurance. Nobody wants health insurance. You want to be able to get medical treatment when necessary without going bankrupt. We've just been convinced that the only way to do that is through some form of health insurance. What you don't, but what do you see when I talked about using words and being precise? You don't want health insurance. What you would like is medical treatment assurance. That should you need medical care, there is a certainty that you can get it without it destroying you. That's what you want. If we actually ask that question, and we stop going into this political tribalism, which will get you absolutely nowhere, we might actually start getting answers to this. When you go political tribalism, you get two things. We should have more private sector insurance options, or the government should take over and we should have Medicaid for all. You notice that there's no option C in there? Or D, or E, or F, or G. We have a nation of over 300 million people. We can't come up with more than two ways to provide health assurance, health care assurance for those people. I just had a blackout there for a second. Anyway, but we're back. There's no other answer. There's no other way to do that. The only way to do that is these two options. That's the dichotomy. And you're trained. Again, let's go back to education. We're going to bring people up in an education system. We call it an education system, indoctrination. And the entire purpose of that system of indoctrination is so that when you pop out at the end of 13 years or you go to university, whatever time you pop out at the other end, that you make a choice as to which side of that dichotomy you go into. And let me tell you something. The people in charge, the people in power, they do not give a flying shit which side you choose. They really don't. They do not care. They just care that you pick a side. That's the important thing. You want to make people pissed off? Don't pick one side or the other of the political dichotomy. Think for yourself. And most people that call themselves independents, you picked a side. You might be a little wishy-washy on, which president you vote for based on how they do their hair or some shit. But most people that I found that are independents, when they say they're independents, and they're talking about voting, and you say, well, tell me the last 20 people you voted for, there's a very clear pattern. You're not independent. You just like the way that it sounds. You truly be independent and say, I don't pick either one of these people, and watch how fast you get attacked. Watch how quick the people who are supposed to be your friends turn on you. Watch how quickly when you refuse to pick a side, they throw you into the other side from them that you did not pick. How many out there, let me see thumbs up, likes, whatever, have been in a discussion where you've taken a logical position but refused to choose one of the two primary sides, and then we're told something like this: you're a stupid libtard, or, well, you're clearly an orange man worshipping right-wing extremist. How many people out there have had that experience? And it'll be a couple seconds of lag, and like every single person on this feed that's listened this long anyway, didn't tune out, has had that experience. And you sit there and go, you don't know who I am. Where does this come from? In fact, I didn't say a single thing that supports that side of the dichotomy. It's because it is enraging when you won't pick. So our challenge in this is to get people who are conditioned to wall off, pick and defend a side, to actually ask a question about finding a solution that's not married to an existing system. So I said that's easier than developing some, anarcho town somewhere in Nebraska or something. Maybe it's not. I mean, we're fighting, a decade and a half, 2 decades of mental conditioning by the time you're trying to reach that person. And that's why you can ask a question like, what can you add to this? And they take it completely the wrong way, totally miss the point. And I'll start saying things, well, you have to have checks and balances. No one said a word about checks and balances. Well, if you do this, then that. No one even said what to do. I asked you, what could you come up with? And you got angry at that. Think about that. That's what we're fighting here. So that's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to start trying to pull it out of people. You tell me any way to do this other than defending one of two sides of the economy. Whether you think it'll work or not, you just see what this comes down to, and it's what I've been teaching for a long time. The most powerful self-learning quantum computer that exists is in here. And I'm not talking about my brain individually. I'm talking about all of us collectively as human beings. The person you think is stupid, and they seem to kind of be stupid in some of the things they do, still has an incredible computer in here. And if you're judging a fish on its ability to climb a tree, you're going to think it's stupid. So that person you think is stupid, maybe you're judging them on things that aren't their talents. But what if we could get 10, 20 million people who currently refuse to ask those questions to start asking them? And this is the important part. We let go of our desire for their answer to be the same as our answer. We let go of that. Instead of when somebody gives an answer that you see flaws with, saying this is why it won't work, it's great that you see flaws. Let's call that a peer review, an honest peer review, unlike current modern science, which also needs reform. An honest peer review is, I see what you're going for there. What if? What if we added this? And then you start to have a dialogue. Because this is where we're going off the rails. The goal is common. The goal is common. We're talking about we should have fair, open debate and be civil to each other. Then you're still fighting each other when you're trying to get to the common place. Why is it such a thing? Because the people in power do not benefit from consensus. They love the word consensus when it pushes an agenda, but they do not benefit from consensus. Every single apparatus of power in the systems, and stop calling it the system. There's a be precise with words. It's not the system. It's the systems, the interlocking, integrated systems of control. Every single one of them is predicated on dividing you from your neighbor, who you have far more in common with than the people that run these systems. So why are we debating who's right when we're both trying to solve the same problem instead of collaborating on what solutions could be? Wouldn't it be great if we had a problem and we came up with 100 potential solutions? Just 100 potential solutions to one problem that we used to believe there were only 2 potential solutions to. And wouldn't it be great if some group of people said, I think this one works. And they went off and tried it. And if we can get just enough freedom that they can be allowed to do that. And if you think that's not going to work, and you can't think of any way to make it work, that you can collaborate with people that have a different idea, and you can go do that. And somebody out there's going, well, that's federalism. That's the promise of federalism, but it's not being delivered on, and it hasn't been delivered on. One of the things you guys have to do is you have to let go of this idea that we can just get it right within the framework of the existing system this time. Because if we're talking about the United States and Canada, you're talking about systems that just their latest version is 200 to 300 years old at this point. Well, next time's going to be different. You ever see the movie Dumb and Dumber? Opt out of these systems. We're not going to correct the systems. What you have to do is develop completely new systems. Completely new ways of doing things. You can't, like, that's my one critique of the words that Curtis chooses to use. We need to reform the legal system. No, we need a new legal system. We're not going to reform the legal system we have is designed to prevent you from reforming it. So you opt out of it. Well, how do you do that? They'll come after you. Well, I didn't say that it was easy, but I'd rather fight that battle than think I'm doing something by picking up a brick and throwing it through a window of somebody that never harmed me. I'd rather fight a battle where the average person looking on goes, those people over there really are peaceful. They really are just trying to do something on their own. And they really are not bothering me. Because the biggest thing people want is to not be bothered. Let me tell you something else you don't want. You don't want a job. You don't want a job. Not in the way we normally think of the term. You want to feel that you do something meaningful and productive, and you want enough income of some flavor to be able to have your needs and your basic wants and some luxuries met. That's what you want. How do you do that? I didn't want to be on the radio 12 years ago when I started doing what I'm doing. I wanted to be able to teach people and entertain people and reach people. So I started a podcast. And today people will go, well, okay, yeah, that's what everybody does. It wasn't in 2008. when I told people that I worked with, and I was a high six-figure earning professional in the corporate world. I'm going to go to this podcast thing. I'm selling out my shares of the company to you at nowhere near what they're worth because I want to go away peacefully. They thought I was crazy. They thought I was nuts. But I knew that, like, breaking into broadcasting wasn't going to work. You know, I could say shit and get fined more money than I was going to make that year. And I'm going to say shit sometimes because it's the word that's called for to be used. I wanted to do things my way. So instead of trying, could you imagine the difference? Had I said, I'm going to reform broadcasting. I'm going to go tell those media outlets how they should be doing things and ramrod my opinions into their apparatus and do things my way and become successful and change all of media by doing that. No. What you see now is those people trying to figure out how to break into podcasting because people like us went and did it. That's not about me. Because, again, I want how to think. That's an example of a solution that worked for me. I want you to take and grab onto that mindset and start in every situation. When you say, I want, and you start thinking conventional things that answer that question, stop. And in the words of Nicole Sauce, be a toddler and say, but why? And keep asking yourself that annoying, but why? But why? But why? Until you actually figure out what it is you really want. And then ask the question, how do I get that? And then you might get pretty good at asking a much more important question. What do most people want, and how do we get that? That's all I got for you. I do want to add one thing, though. I don't know who Curtis has called into this, but I'm in. I'm in on let's keep doing this, and let's form a mastermind group, and let's get as many ideas as we can, and let's push them around. Let's start doing joint things. We get all on the air together, and let's expand our circle. You know, I don't know who Curtis called out in this, but I think we need more than just people that are in permaculture, regen ag and stuff. Like, I'd love to get John Bush involved in this if he's not. I don't know who Curtis called out. Vin Armani. Vin probably has never grown a potato in his life or a bean, right? He thinks it's a cool thing, but I just don't see Vin in the garden, right? But when it comes to thinking for freedom, for humanity, he's outstanding. So, you know, Pete Quinones, Free Man Behind the Wall. I'd love to bring him into this discussion. There's some things we really disagree with when it comes to how we look at individuals based on their occupation. I don't hate cops. I don't judge a cop by his badge, good or bad. I judge the man behind it. Right? I'm not going to write off any group of people any more than I'll, make anybody that's in that group a hero. I don't believe in either or. I judge the man and the man's actions and what would I have done in his shoes in that situation. But I still want that input. And I think the more ideas we can get, the better. So that's my call out. Let's make this group of thinkers fairly large. And then let's get some sort of organization behind it. And let's run with this. Let's challenge people because we'll do a really good job of getting the people on the other side to think. The real solutions won't come from us. They won't come from me. They won't come from Curtis. They'll come from you. And the more we can do, the more of that can happen. So I'm in, guys. Let's figure out how to get this thing going. With that, take care. And again, if you want to hear this again or what have you, or you came in at the end, it will be on my podcast today as my segment.